It was one of those dark and stormy nights where the rain tapped relentlessly on my bedroom window. With a laptop resting on my lap, I delved into the eerie world of Reddit horror stories. I had a fascination for the strange and unexplained, so these tales were right up my alley. The room was dimly lit by my laptop screen, casting a soft glow on my face. I was wrapped in a cozy blanket, my cat purring contently by my side. It was supposed to be a relaxing night in. But as I scrolled through story after story, I couldn't help but get increasingly spooked. The stories on Reddit were getting more and more disturbing. People shared their personal encounters with the supernatural, tales of haunted houses and inexplicable disappearances. I couldn't stop myself from clicking on each one, even though the hairs on my arms stood on end with each new revelation. As I was reading a particularly chilling account of a night spent in a haunted hotel, a sudden chill gripped the room. I shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around me. The rain outside had intensified, the sound of it against the window creating an eerie background noise. I tried to shake off the unease and continued scrolling, but the feeling that someone was watching me lingered. I glanced around my room, half expecting to see a shadow lurking in the corner. Of course, there was nothing there, just the darkness and the rain. Just as I was about to click on another story, a loud crash came from the kitchen. My heart leaped in my chest, and my cat darted under the bed. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should investigate. But it was probably just something falling in the storm, right? I told myself that, even though my heart raced. As I tried to calm down, my laptop screen flickered. For a moment, the room was engulfed in darkness. Panic coursed through me, but then the screen came back to life, and the room was bathed in the eerie glow once more. It had been a brief power outage, a common occurrence in my neighborhood. I breathed a sigh of relief, but the stories had made me jumpy, and the incident only heightened my unease. It felt as if the stories themselves were casting a shadow over my room. I was about to close the laptop and call it a night when I heard it. A faint whisper. I froze, straining my ears to listen. The whisper was indistinct at first, but it grew louder, and I could make out a faint voice, speaking softly but urgently. It seemed to be coming from my laptop's speakers, and it sent a shiver down my spine. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was pleading and desperate. I stared at the laptop in horror, the screen now showing nothing but static. The voice grew louder, and I could feel a cold presence in the room with me. It was as if the stories I'd been reading had somehow crossed over into my reality, and I was trapped in a waking nightmare. With trembling hands, I slammed the laptop shut, cutting off the voice. The room plunged into darkness again, but this time, I didn't dare reach for the flashlight on my bedside table. I clutched the blanket, my heart pounding, and waited for the feeling of dread to subside. Minutes felt like hours, and I finally mustered the courage to turn on the lamp beside my bed. The room was empty, and the voice had disappeared. It was just me, the rain outside, and the cat that had cautiously emerged from its hiding spot. I realized that I had gone too far down the rabbit hole, letting the stories get the best of me. I vowed to stick to less eerie content in the future, and remind myself that no matter how creepy the tales may be, they're just words on a screen. As I looked out at the rain-soaked world beyond my window, I couldn't help but wonder if, for a brief moment, the line between fiction and reality had blurred, leaving me with a chilling experience I'd never forget. I had always been fascinated by the paranormal, and often found myself spending hours on Reddit's horror story subreddit, scrolling through tales that made my skin crawl. One quiet evening, I was home alone, rain tapping on the window, and I decided to delve into the dark world of online horror once again. As I navigated through the subreddit, one post titled, "My Childhood Haunting," grabbed my attention. The user, Paranormal Throwback, shared a detailed account of growing up in a house plagued by inexplicable occurrences. It was a chilling, yet believable story filled with strange footsteps, objects moving on their own, and area whispers in the dead of night. I was engrossed in the narrative, feeling the author's fear and anxiety through his words. However, what set this post apart was that Paranormal Throwback claimed to live just a few towns over from where I resided. The thought of potentially visiting the place and investigating the haunting began to intrigue me. With a sense of excitement mixed with skepticism, I decided to reach out to the author through a private message on Reddit. I asked for more details about the location and his experiences. To my surprise, Paranormal Throwback responded promptly, sharing the address and offering to meet in person to discuss the haunting further. My curiosity got the best of me, and I agreed to meet the author at a nearby coffee shop the following evening. He seemed genuinely scared and eager to have someone validate his experiences. As I sat at the cafe waiting for our meeting, the rain outside started to fall harder, creating a gloomy backdrop for what would soon unfold. Paranormal Throwback arrived, a nervous look in his eyes. He recounted the history of the house he had grown up in, revealing that it had been abandoned for years due to the reported hauntings. The address was indeed just a short drive away, and he suggested we visit the house together to see if we could capture any paranormal activity. Night fell quickly, and the rain continued to pour. Armed with flashlights, we approached the abandoned house. The place was old and decrepit, its weather-worn exterior telling tales of neglect. It was immediately apparent that this was not a place anyone would want to be in after dark. We cautiously entered the house, our footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. Paranormal Throwback began to share his personal experiences, which included hearing strange noises, witnessing unexplained shadows, and feeling a pervasive sense of dread that still haunted him. The atmosphere in the house was thick with tension. As we explored further, the tension only grew. Creaking floorboards and the sound of something scraping against a wall unnerved us both. Our flashlights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Every noise seemed to take on a sinister significance. We made our way to the basement, where Paranormal Throwback had encountered some of the most disturbing phenomena. The air was frigid, and I could see my breath as I listened intently for any signs of the supernatural. Suddenly, a loud, unexplainable crash echoed from the shadows, followed by a blood-curdling scream from Paranormal Throwback. Fear washed over me as I rushed to his side, but he was just as terrified as I was. We decided to make a hasty exit from the basement, leaving the house behind. The rain outside had turned into a torrential downpour, matching the chaos we had just experienced. We returned to the coffee shop, shaken and speechless. Our investigation had unearthed more questions than answers, and the real-life horror we had encountered was enough to make us doubt our fascination with the supernatural. As I drove home that night, the rain pelting the windshield, I couldn't help but wonder if the stories on Reddit had brought us face to face with something we were never meant to understand. It was a chilling reminder that the line between reality and the supernatural can blur in the most unexpected ways, leaving you with a true horror story to tell. As a lifelong fan of horror, I was always on the lookout for the next spine-tingling story to send shivers down my spine. My favorite haunt for such tales was Reddit, where users shared their creepiest encounters, both real and imagined. Little did I know that one fateful night would turn me into a character in my very own horror story. It was a quiet, moonless night, the perfect setting for indulging my love for the macabre. The rain outside my window provided an eerie backdrop, and I was huddled under a blanket with my laptop, scrolling through the darkest corners of the internet. One particular story caught my eye, titled "The Haunting of Willow House." The user, Spectral Eyes, recounted a series of strange events that unfolded in an old, abandoned mansion located on the outskirts of a sleepy, small town. The vivid descriptions and unsettling details left me thoroughly captivated. Spectral Eyes described eerie apparitions, objects moving on their own, and an overwhelming sense of dread that clung to Willow House like a sinister aura. As I read on, I noticed something unusual. The user mentioned an address for the house at the end of the story. The thought of visiting the house and investigating its supernatural claims began to gnaw at me. With a mix of curiosity and excitement, I decided to embark on an adventure. I checked the address, and it turned out to be within driving distance. The prospect of experiencing a real-life horror story was simply too alluring to pass up. I threw on my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way to the car. The rain was still pouring, and as I approached the small town, the streets seemed eerily deserted. The ominous mood was only heightened as I navigated the winding road leading to Willow House. The place was so isolated that I could barely hear the distant hum of civilization. When I arrived at the address, I was met with a decrepit mansion, looming like a monstrous specter against the darkened sky. The place was a sight to behold, but the gut feeling of unease started to creep in. Ignoring it, I proceeded to the entrance, flashlight in hand. The door was slightly ajar, swinging eerily in the wind, as if beckoning me inside. My footsteps echoed through the cavernous hallways, and my flashlight illuminated rooms frozen in time, with peeling wallpaper and shattered windows. Willow House had clearly seen better days. As I ventured deeper into the mansion, the air grew colder, and the oppressive silence was only broken by the occasional creaking floorboard. I began to question the wisdom of my decision, but my determination to uncover the truth kept me moving forward. Then, it happened. A sudden, bone-chilling whisper brushed against my ear, and I could feel hot breath on my neck. I spun around, but there was no one there. Panic welled up inside me, and I desperately tried to rationalize the experience. With each step, the whispers grew louder, now forming unintelligible words that seemed to come from all directions. I reached a room that was bathed in an unnatural, bluish light, and the atmosphere turned even more sinister. In the dim glow, I saw shadowy figures moving in the periphery of my vision, their forms shifting and distorting. Terror gripped me, and I fled down the corridor, retracing my steps to find the exit. But the mansion seemed to conspire against me, twisting and turning, leaving me disoriented and lost. The whispers grew more frenzied, and the figures drew closer, their ghastly shapes contorted with malevolence. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, I stumbled upon a staircase, and without hesitation, I sprinted down, my flashlight flickering ominously. I burst out of Willow House, gasping for breath, and slammed the door shut behind me. The rain had intensified, but I felt a profound sense of relief to be free of that malevolent place. I hurried back to my car, drenched and disheveled, and sped away from Willow House as if my life depended on it. The horrors I encountered that night were beyond any tale I had ever read. It was a stark reminder that the line between fiction and reality can blur in the world of horror, and sometimes, the most terrifying stories are the ones that become our own.